Hey everyone, Luke Anderson here. Wanted to do a little video just telling my TBI story a little bit. So you can find it on the website, mytbifight.com, and hopefully this will be provide some value to somebody. My TBI story starts when I was 10 years old. I was heading to Washington from Billings, Montana. Big sky country, as you can see. Well, it's a little overcasty, as you can see, but usually you can see for miles and miles. They call it the big sky country up here. So I was headed to Washington with my grandparents and my sister. I was 10 years old, and we were driving from Montana to Washington. Excuse me. And heading on the west side of Montana over past Missoula, in between Missoula and Idaho. We were just almost to the Idaho border. We were coming around a corner, and in that section of highway they have 6 to 8 foot concrete barriers that divide the 2 lanes heading west and the 2 lanes heading east. And then there's a big ravine. So there's these big concrete barriers, and we were coming around, going through the mountains, coming around a corner. We were passing a semi, and my grandfather, who was driving at the time, ended up hitting a mattress. There was a mattress in the middle of the road. He was halfway through passing the semi, and the mattress got stuck up in the wheel well and locked up the steering. And as we came out of the corner, the steering was still stuck in that position, going on through that right corner, and it started to force us under the semi trailer. And my grandfather fought it to make sure we didn't go under the semi trailer, and the mattress broke free. So, or we got steering back somehow, and with the overcorrection, we ended up hitting one of those 8 foot concrete barriers, went up the side, and spun 2.5 times like a football. We went up once, spun, landed. They think that's when most of the windows shattered. Went up again, came down, popped all the tires, went up, had another time, and landed on its top, and then slid for another 100 to 200 yards. After that first flip, they think, is when I was ejected from the vehicle, and I went out the side window. We were in a Dodge minivan, and I was on the driver's side in the middle row. So I had a shoulder belt that came from over my left shoulder, and they think I went out the side of the seatbelt and went out one of the already broken windows. Rolled 2.5 times. 2 to 3 times, something like that, on the pavement, and ended up landing on my feet like a gymnast. Thankfully, I'd been taking gymnastics, and the EMTs credited that as one of the factors that saved my life. The other thing that saved my life was the seatbelt. If I hadn't been wearing a seatbelt, immediately as soon as we hit that concrete barrier, I would have gone straight forward and hit the windshield and probably broken my neck. The other thing that saved my life is they don't think I went out right away for the same reason, because they think the glass broke after that first initial flip, and then I went out an already broken window. Again, if the window hadn't been broken, I would have hit it, probably broken my neck and died, or been paralyzed. But I rolled on the pavement, and the semi driver at this point had slowed down because he saw what was happening, and he said that literally I was rolling on the pavement as the van was spinning over the top of me. Thankfully I didn't get crushed. I'm a believer. I believe my Jesus Christ, my Savior, and if nothing else, there was a believer that was made that day. He said that he saw a hand holding the van above me, above this little boy that was rolling on the pavement. So pretty cool story if you're a person of faith. Anyway, so that's where it started. I ended up spending 2 or 3 days in the hospital in Superior, Montana, a little teeny town. Great people, great restaurant there called Durango's. If you guys are watching this, you make some killer food, man. I love stopping in there. Especially, you can get huckleberry anything over there. So good. Anyway, little town. I think the hospital is like 12 or 20 beds, something like that. I mean, this is a type of town in Montana. It's surprising they have a hospital because it's pretty rural. But they treated me amazingly, and got me and my family taken care of. I didn't break anything miraculously. I did dislocate my left shoulder, but being so young, I think it just popped right back in. I did get some micro tears in the ligaments and the rotator pad, which later down the road, I ended up having to have surgery on because repeated use, especially being a competitive swimmer in grade school, middle school, and high school, that kind of tore that up a bit. But I ended up spraining the whole left side of my body. Literally everything from head to toe on the left side was sprained, and I had a concussion. Well, it was deemed as a concussion at the time, and later we found out was essentially an undiagnosed traumatic brain injury. And from that point on, I had daily headaches. I lost a whole bunch of my schooling, particularly math. I had almost no math skill. Well, I didn't have any math skills after the car accident. I had to start over. Thankfully, I was only 10, so I didn't have too much to catch up on. Some of the other things I experienced, I had road rash from head to toe. I wasn't wearing shoes during the accident, so I literally had second-degree burns from head to toe. I had glass and debris lodged in various parts of my body, particularly on my left side, head, face, arm. Different parts of my arm, hands, legs, knees, feet, just kind of all over. Some of it I've had surgically removed. Then the other stuff has worked its way out naturally, which has been good, especially the stuff in my head, because in the back of my head, that's caused a lot of problems through the years. But we found ways to kind of help get that out quicker, which has been wonderful. Anyway, growing up, being 10 years old and kind of losing a little bit of memory here and there, this was my normal. Like, it quickly became my normal. I didn't know anything else. So headaches was a normal thing for me. Struggling with math was a normal thing for me. Struggling with grammar was a normal thing for me. Later I found out that the struggles I had were more along the lines of like a special ed student. And the school system wanted to put me in special education. And thankfully we had been homeschooling, my sister, myself, and my mom and I, and that ended up being a huge blessing, which later I've had some doctors even credit as potentially saving my life, based upon the different things that we did and the different environments I was in that really made it possible for me to recover naturally. Instead of being in a classroom, from 8 to 3, with the fluorescent lighting and all the students and, all that stimulus. So, if you don't mind, I'm gonna put my sunglasses on. It's getting a little bright out here now. Was overcast, but now it's getting pretty bright out. The sun's coming out, which is nice. Anyway, so we had been homeschooling due to I was an asthmatic as a kid. And the school system wouldn't let me take my inhaler with me. So my parents said, how bad can we screw up kindergarten? And we ended up loving it, went through most of grade school. Then the accident happened, and we decided to continue on homeschooling from there. My parents thought, well, I don't think you need special ed classes. Let's just try it for a year or two and see what we can come up with. Through that, found that I think that's when my mom and, all of us realized my mom is a natural born educator. So that was a huge blessing. She is very, very good at figuring out everybody's individual learning styles and catering content to that learning style and different things to learn about. Anyway, that helped a ton. Like I said, environment helped. I wasn't in a very intensive, stimulating environment. I was able to heal, which was really important, especially with the road rash, because I had severe nerve damage from that, and excuse me, that would cause severe itching attacks. Like all of a sudden, like all over head to toe, I would just be itching on the inside, and I couldn't stop it. And I would have to take Epsom salt baths and do different things to help calm that down and find different ways to get rid of inflammation and that type of thing to help the healing process and help alleviate some of those symptoms. So anyway, went through life thinking that this was normal, or at least semi-normal, and had a very unique education because of it. Because we were homeschooled, we were able to travel with my dad, who is an engineer, and he had to do some traveling, and we'd go with him a lot of the time because we didn't have to abide by school schedules, so we got to do some cool learning. I did a lot of work on a bill that I proposed in the Montana legislature. I worked on that for 4 sessions. Finally got it passed. It was a law change requiring people traveling through Montana, or people who live here, that if they're traveling on the interstate, that they have to secure their loads, like in the back of pickups or on top of vans, that type of thing. Because that's what caused our accident. Somebody obviously didn't secure their mattress, probably going to college or something like that, or coming home from college, and didn't secure their mattress in the bed of their pickup, flew out, we hit it, and changed our lives forever. And as a kid, I was angry at the mattress. I've never been angry at the person that lost the mattress. I'm not sure why, but I remember drawing pictures of me like blowing up the mattress because I was mad at like this inanimate object. So I guess it's better than being mad at a person. But anyway, I didn't want that to happen to somebody else. So I told my mom, I think this was shortly after the car accident, I said, hey, is it a law for people to tie down their loads on the interstate? And my mom said, I don't know, let's find out. So we looked it up. Sure enough, we did not have a law. The only securement law that was in place for non-commercial vehicles was if you were hauling something to the dump. So if you're hauling, a big bundle of sticks or garbage bags or whatever to the dump, by law you'd have to secure those. But not if you're going to college or moving or anything like that. So I said, well, that should be a law. And my mom said, great. Yeah, I totally agree. This is gonna be a great learning experience for you, Luke. So we learned about the legislative process. Well, long story short, every step I said, well, let's do that. And my mom said, well, great, this is gonna be a good learning experience. I was about to turn 11 I was 10, about to turn 11 no, I was 11, I take it back, I was 11. Oh, airplane, hold on. We're right by the airport. Didn't think that through very, very, very closely. Thankfully in Billings we don't have a lot of air traffic because we only have 120,000 people that live in the city, but we're right next to the airport, so I didn't think about that. Anyway, so my mom didn't think we'd ever get anywhere, but I'd learn about the legislative process. I'm 11 years old, nobody's gonna take me seriously. Well, long story short, through some different political happenings that happened, we had a senator who, long story short, basically wasn't expected to win our district, our Senate district, and kind of got put in a lose-lose scenario that he ended up winning. And so kind of as a stick it to him, at least that's kind of my impression of it years later, he said, well, I'm gonna take this kid, and he's right, I think he's got a great thing, but I'm gonna show these people who didn't believe in me, and we're gonna make something happen that's not typical, right? So it ended up working out. God definitely had a plan for this, and that started my about 8-year journey working in the legislature, trying to get this law passed. Like I said, it was 4 sessions, so in Montana we meet every other year. So it took 8 years for it to get passed, but we finally got it passed. I learned a lot. So anyway, I digress from that. It was a very interesting experience though. So like I said, I swam competitively, was active in a whole bunch of different things, from dancing to swimming to trying out different sports and to art. I mean, I'm not artistic at all, but I just kind of tried it all, I didn't really have this one thing that I really did. I mean, swimming was for a while, until I blew out my shoulder. And anyway, thought that I had, recovered. I was fine from this concussion from my car accident. And I had some residual things, and it was mostly like the shoulder and some of the other body parts that I sprained, and the glass or debris, and that's what I thought my biggest struggle was, and for a time it was. Ended up going to college, being homeschooled. That was another benefit of being homeschooled. I got 2 years of college done while I was in high school, so I went from being the kid that needed to be in special ed to graduating with my associate's degree the week after I graduated from high school. So that was pretty cool. And at a third the price, because I was a high school student, they gave special pricing. Anyway, so graduated high school, graduated with an associate's degree, and I thought, I'm going to climb the corporate ladder at a bank. That's what I'm going to do. Worked there for 5 months and hated it. I was in the operations department, so I answered phones, had to tell people why debit cards does not equivalent free money, those types of conversations every day. And it was horrible, and I hated it, and so I left. And I went back to school, and I was still dating my high school sweetheart, who is now my wife. Her name is Anna. And we were dating. We had gotten engaged. And I left the bank and went back to school, and was working in retail positions. I had done a lot of sales positions in the last couple of years of high school, and then throughout college. Did some sales jobs, retail jobs, and graduated college a year and a half later. So I did 2 years of college in a year and a half, and then we got married a few months after I finished college. I didn't want to be married and in school, so I finished school, got married, and a month later we found out we were pregnant with our first child. A surprise! So great blessing. During that time, I also went through a job change and ended up becoming a manager at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Did that for a few years, and life was going great. Like I said, I thought I had recovered. I was doing it. I had graduated high school, I had graduated college, and in record time, I might add, like at least by my standards, I thought I had done great. So I had my college degree. I had done some sales jobs. I was now in a career. I was now management at Enterprise. I was climbing the ladder. I liked what I did. It was very interesting. I love vehicles just in general. So I was doing something that was almost a passion, and just loving life. Minus that I was working a ton. I was working a ton. That sucked, but I'd gotten used to that by now. Figured that was part of the American dream, and that's what you do. You work 80 hours, 70 to 80 hours a week. Anyway, had a kid. It was good. For the most part, we had little struggles in our, we were newly married. Like I said, going through job changes and kids and all that. So, but I figured that was kind of all normal. Like even like at our low points, I figured that was just kind of normal. And in 2014, like I said, I've been a manager for a while, doing well, and I had a couple of episodes where I ended up in the hospital. Or at least I should say I ended up in the emergency room. I shouldn't say I ended up in the hospital. I didn't do any like overnight stays, but I went to the ER like 3 times that year. Like one right at the beginning of the year, another one like springish, and then another one like midsummer, something like that. And every time they said that I was experiencing the symptoms that I had mentioned were like I was having a stroke. Here I am, I'm 23 years old, and they're telling me I might be having a stroke. Well, me just toughing it out, because that's what I learned to do with the head pain, I thought, well, I'm fine. I can wait this out. Well, I'd wait, a day before I went in. They're like, we can't tell if you had a stroke or not. You waited too long to come in. So I'm like, whatever. I just was sick, just stressed out, whatever. Well, September of 2014, getting ready for work one day. It was like a Tuesday or Wednesday. I mean, it was like just a regular day, getting ready to go to work, tying my tie, walking into the kitchen, and all of a sudden, like I said, I'd had headaches every day, so this was normal. All of a sudden, my head pain went, like on a scale of 1 to 10, at least for me, it went from like a 4 to like a 9. I mean, 10 for me is like I black out, right? So it's like 9, and I'm like, I fell to the floor, I'm sobbing, like I can like see the curtain coming in and out, like I can tell I'm about to pass out, I'm about to vomit, like other bodily functions are happening that are not pleasant, and I'm like in the middle of my kitchen, just sobbing because the pain is so intense and I don't know what to do. And my wife, comes over, comes in out, and she goes, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "Something is wrong. My head is killing me." Like, so I ended up staying home that day. Blurry vision, intense vertigo, nausea. Like I said, I started vomiting. I think I vomited like 6 or 7 times that day, even before I had started eating. And I just could not find anything that was helping. So I rest. I call in that day. Excuse me. And the next day I go into work. Excuse me. And my employees knew that I wasn't feeling well and things like that. And by noon, I had thrown up like 8 times. And my employees sent me home. They're like, "Luke, something is wrong. Like, you are not well, dude." And so they sent me home. And I'm trying to think exactly how it went. I can't remember if I did 2 days or 3 days where I tried to go to work. I think I tried to go to again the next day. Yeah, that's what I did. But both times I had to have my wife drive me. So like, I'm working for a rental car company, but I couldn't drive a car, right? So my wife drove me again for another half day. And, we just thought I was just really sick. We still had no idea about the head stuff, right? Just intense head pain, all these things going on. I'm like almost blacking out, trying to do reports, trying to rent cars, trying to train employees. And my employee sent me home again, and that was actually the last time I set foot in that office. I think I couldn't go back again, because then we really figured out something was wrong. I went to my neurologist, and he's like, "Yeah, something is definitely wrong," and put me through the whole like rigmarole for traumatic brain injury protocols, at least what he had access to up here in Billings. And it was a little bit difficult because we found out that there's kind of 2 different trains of thought when it comes to head injuries in the neurology community. You've got the one side, kind of more the old school side way of thinking of where if you have a head injury, you have to get it treated within 6 to 12 months, otherwise you're just stuck. And that is how the people here are, right? Which that is where you can, in my experience personally, I disagree with that. But I do think that they are right in that that's where you can get the most effective treatment done. But I'm living proof that you can treat a traumatic brain injury past the 6 to 12 month mark. Because at this point, I was like 14 years post injury. So I'm living proof that you can treat it. Anyway, so I ran out of options. I had some people here that wouldn't see me just because it wasn't in their repertoire, right? And then you've got the other side that thinks you can treat traumatic brain injuries. Obviously, it's most effective in that 6 to 12 month window, but you can treat it regardless how old it is. So we went through all the things that they thought would work here, the things that they had access to. That took until about December, early December, or November. So September, October, November. So 2.5-ish to 3 months. I mean, we're talking Botox injections, infusions, medications, everything, right? Everything. And nearly killed me. I remember telling my wife and my family, I'm like, if this goes on any longer, I don't think I'm going to survive. I remember telling them that. I don't remember much during that 2 to 3 month window, but I remember telling them I don't think I'm going to survive. So anyway, I got a referral to the Mayo Clinic, and they basically had a waiting list for a waiting list. So we thought, well, we don't know what else to do. We might as well start the process. And it was going to be between 9 and 18 months before I could get get treatment and get a diagnosis and all that jazz. So we started the process there, and we thought, well, we need to look for other options. We don't have time to wait, because by this point, my wife and I had found out that shortly after, I think we found out like beginning of October, my wife was pregnant with our second son. So I had a sense of urgency, right? I've already got a new wife. You know, we'd only been married a few years. I've got a son. Now I have a second baby on the way. Like, I've got to produce. I've got to put out. I've got to provide. I'm the man. You know what I mean? So I had an urgency. One second. Sorry. Sorry about that. Anyway, hopefully this video turns out okay. Anyway, it's just such a nice day out. I just couldn't not be outside. It's just so nice out. Anyway, so I had a sense of urgency. Me and my family, we took to the internet and looked to finding places that would fit what I needed, you know, that would treat me, you know, 13, 14 years post-injury. And we came up with a list, and on top of everybody's list was a place called Carrick Brain Centers down in Texas. They've since rebranded to Cerebrum. They're down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I called them up, explained my situation, and without hesitation, they said, "You're a perfect candidate for our program. When can you come down?" I'm like, as soon as possible. They're like, "Great, come down Monday." This was Friday. This was Friday at like 4 p.m. And logistically, we couldn't make it work, so I ended up going down the following week. So basically, within 2 weeks, they got me down there. I went down there for, I think, 10 days. Did like 6 days of treatment. And they're a functional neurology clinic, so they focus on functional neurology and chiropractic, and I'll explain all that another time. But very different than how hospitals or other traditional medical clinics approach things. And they're of the mindset that it doesn't matter. I mean, I went down, I remember there was a guy that was I was doing therapy alongside, and he was a Vietnam vet. Well, shoot, Vietnam was a long time ago. And he had had a TBI during Vietnam. So, again, living proof that you don't have to be within that 6 to 12 month window to treat it. Anyway, went down there, and you know, they take you through different testing, and I remember the doctor. You know, he got my medical history. I had a lot of it. He went through it, and he had me do these testings. He came in, and before the testing results had come back, and we did a little pre-meeting, and I told him my symptoms and all this jazz. And you know, I could tell he was very confident. You know, my mom was with me, and she said the same thing. We could tell he was confident, kind of like, yeah, we got this. We'll get you taken care of. And I'll never forget, after I did all the testing and they got the results back, he came in. We were waiting in the room, and I remember he came in, totally different look on his face, different energy about him, and he just was very intense. And like, you could tell he normally wasn't that intense of a guy, a very lovable, big teddy bear type guy, and he was very, very intense. And I remember he looked at me, he looked at my mom, he sat down, he looked at me, and he goes, "Dude, you are seriously messed up." And I joke about this today because I remember my mom, oh no. Like, Mom, he's not talking about, like, you know, my character. He's talking about, like, neurologically. So we kind of chuckled a little bit about that, trying to break the tension a little bit. And he looks up at me and he goes, "In all seriousness, Luke," he's like, "I am shocked at what you've been able to accomplish given the extent of your symptoms and where you're at neurologically. On paper, you should be paralyzed. He's like, based upon your testing, basically what's going on, if your brain was a computer, your brain is starting to blue screen. Your brain is shutting down. Your brain was damaged it healed, but it did not rewire itself properly. And now it's been on overload for so long with those wrong connections that it doesn't know anything else to do other than shut down. And you'll find that I'm a very layman's terms type of guy. I don't like the very technical stuff because it confuses me. So that analogy really spoke to me and really made a lot of sense. So he went on to explain it more technically, but basically I had different parts of my brain that were shutting down, and my midbrain was taking on the work trying to like keep those areas still active. And it had been on overload, and it didn't know what else to do. So they did some other tests, and like one of them I'll never forget, it was very visual, one of the most visual tests that they did that was very telling to me that I had no clue on. He had me lay down on a table, and I laid down on this table, closed my eyes, had my socks and shoes off, and he said, okay, I want you to tell me which toe I'm touching and on which foot. So he touched the first toe, and big toe, right foot. Touch the next toe, middle toe, left foot. Touch the next one, pinky toe, left foot. You know, on and on and on he goes. And we get all done. He goes, okay, sit up. And by this time there was a therapist in the room who was taking notes. My mom was there, he was there, and they're all just like staring at me. Like, okay, how'd I do? Kind of goes, well, Luke, you got them all wrong. And I go, what do you mean I got them all wrong? I'm like, no, I didn't. He goes, yeah, you got them all wrong. And the therapist says, Luke, you even got them wrong on which foot was being touched. I'm like, I look at my mom, and she's like crying and, you know, emotional, and I don't blame her. Like, it had set in with her already. Here I'm still like in denial, otherwise I'd have been in the same boat she was. And she just kind of nods her head. She's like, yeah. And it was either 2 or 3 times that like I didn't even get the right foot correct, not let alone the right toe. I didn't even get the right foot right. So like that kind of shows you that how messed up the connections were. So we started therapy. Like I said, we did, I think, 5 or 6 days of therapy, and a lot of chiropractic based, a lot of eye exercises, a lot of different things that stimulated different parts of the brain, with the whole goal of trying to ramp up those areas of the brain that were not responding and were starting to go dormant. They also said, you know, I mentioned that I had been to the ER 3 times that year, 2014 anyway, for stroke symptoms. Well, they told me, well, that was your body telling you, something's wrong, something's wrong. And that was my body warning me, hey, something's wrong, your brain's shutting down. I didn't know how to interpret it at the time, but that's what was going on. And as we went through this journey, we kept finding all these things that I'd been told to ignore, or told that were irrelevant, different symptoms. Like one example was my skin. Like someone would grab my skin, and like I'd welt up around, you know, where they grab me, even if it was really lightly. Or if I get scratched, it would welt, you know. And come to find out, I have this thing called wheals, or tracks as some people call it. And it can be like a histamine response, so if you're like allergic, which everyone thought that's what was the case for me because I have so many allergies. But it's also a neurological disorder where the connection between the brain and the skin is broken, and basically the receptors don't know how to respond, if that makes sense. Basically, the connection between the brain and the receptors, somewhere in there, it doesn't know how to respond. The brain doesn't know how to respond, so it tells the skin to respond in the most extreme way possible, which is flare up, welt up, be inflamed, right? So, you know, we thought that was something that we had to ignore, and there's all these little minute things that we thought were little and minute. Come to find out, they were all symptoms and confirmations that I had this undiagnosed traumatic brain injury. So I ended up going down several times to this clinic down in Texas developed a team. They had several teams there. They kind of would switch me around depending on what they would want to work on that time. Met a lot of great people, a lot of great patients, or TBI survivors, I guess I should say. People who had PTS, Lyme disease. I mean, people from all over the world. Like, it was really cool. A lot of great doctors, therapists, phlebotomists, all that jazz. And so I went down there several times over the course of the next 18 months or so. Saw a ton of improvement. We worked a lot on the light sensitivity, hence why I wear sunglasses a ton, just because it's more comfortable for me. Although I'm able to stand a ton more of light than I used to. I had extreme light sensitivity. I would wear these inside in a dark room. I mean, that's how extreme it was. Extreme noise sensitivity. As you can imagine, with young kids, that has been very difficult. But having to deal with the noise sensitivity was tough, and still is. Especially like in work environments or in church or, wherever I was at, social gatherings. So we worked a lot on that. We also found that my resting heart rate was like between 130 or 125 and 135 at 23 years old. I've confirmed this with multiple doctors. They said if I hadn't have figured that out, best case scenario, I would have made it to 40 before I had a heart attack. At least that's what's been told to me. Worst case, I would have made it to 30. So, no bueno, right? So, anyway, we worked on that, and we worked on getting the pain down. We worked on balance, all sorts of things. And all of it really helped. Got to the point where I could start working again and I ended up starting a few businesses. I've always been very entrepreneurial. And that was awesome. Ended up the majority of my team down at Cerebrum ended up moving to Colorado and starting their another clinic called Revive Treatment Centers of America. So I ended up transitioning to them. They're in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, and that's where I go now. Same principle on what I treat. That team was familiar with me. And I felt the most comfortable with them, so I transitioned with them. And we've continued, and they've brought on other new things that Cerebrum didn't have, or did differently, and we just have tried different things and found what works, found what doesn't work, and have gotten me to the place where I'm at now. And now, like I said, I have multiple businesses, some small, some medium, I guess. I don't know, whatever you consider medium, big, small business, but basically I've just found problems to solve, and through when I was recovering, there were times where I didn't have a lot of hope, I didn't have a lot of confidence, and so on small scale, and I didn't have a lot of fulfillment. So I'd find problems to solve, and problems that I could solve, or find problems that I knew people who could solve them, even if it was small. Like Mrs. Smith, is having trouble getting her garbage taken out. Like, oh, well, she lives next door to Johnny, and Johnny can help take the garbage. Just finding little things to like help people, right? I helped a guy write a business plan, and he was starting a new body shop. Just different. I did a segment of his business plan, I should say. I didn't write the whole thing, just like a segment, right? It was not in an area that I knew more about than he did, and I just helped him out in there, and and in that case, I was able to make a little bit of money. He paid me a little bit to do that, which helped. But I just found little things and built on that, little problems that I could solve, and then I started getting bigger problems and bigger problems and bigger problems. Well, ended up starting a couple of businesses based upon some of those problems to solve, and they're really getting kicked off, and they're really launching now. And then I got approached to solve a big problem, a big need in our community. And took that challenge on, and has been an awesome learning experience and a great way to get me back into the community and back being being productive, and really helping me establish where my new boundaries are. So that's kind of where I'm at now, is I've kind of reestablished where my new boundary is, where my new where my new floor is, so to speak, on what my level of productivity and activity can be, and I'm moving forward from there. Very excited for figuring this new normal out, and finding new and creative ways to continue to move forward. Because I really struggled with having a traumatic brain injury. I didn't want to accept it, because I felt accepting was failure. Acceptance was giving up. And recently I had the opportunity to talk with a gal in our community that went to high school with my wife, and we were talking, and we both agreed on the acceptance thing. But she said, you know what, Luke, there are certain aspects of your injury and your condition that you do have to accept, but you don't have to settle. And I went, huh, that makes a lot of sense to me. I have to accept certain parts of where I'm at, but I don't need to settle. I can keep moving forward, and I can keep finding ways to move forward that work and fit for me and my condition. So anyway, that's what I'm working on now, finding creative ways to continue to provide value. I found that is a huge passion of mine, is to provide value to people and help people solve problems, find resources, that type of thing. And finding creative ways to do that fit me and that are unique to me. So that's the project right now. And continuing to move forward, continuing to work on getting the pain. I do still have headaches every day, but I can function, right? I can get outside, I can go for a little hike, I can, work, I can meet with people, I can network, I can go work out, live a semi-normal life, and it's awesome. Play with my kids. We have 3 now, by the way, all boys. Our oldest and our second oldest will be 5 and 3 in May. And then our youngest, right at the time of this video, which is towards the end of March, he is almost 7 months old. So lots of fun. But anyway, that's kind of my story. I know this video is kind of long. Not everyone's going to watch it, and that's okay. But some of you might find value in it. Maybe you'll find hope. That's my hope, is that you do. Because you never know what's going to happen. I never expected myself to be in this position, but I'm very excited for the direction that I'm going to be going, and the direction I have been going. And I've had the opportunity to speak into some people's lives because of this condition, or because of this situation, I guess, that me and my family been in. I've been able to help people through some things, and then I've also made connections because I found people to help me through things. It's been just overall, I found ways to make it work, and I have found ways to make it a blessing. And it's all about the mindset and how you view it. I'm very passionate about having the right mindset and having a positive, forward-moving mindset. So anyway, I hope this is valuable to you. Continue to check out the website, mytbifight.com. Check out some of the new swag that's coming out, and some of the shirts and things like that. I'm very excited about that. Check out the blog. We've got other videos that I'm going to be posting, and we've just got a lot of exciting things that are coming, that I think will provide a value to a lot of you. So keep it up. If you have any questions, I'd love to connect with you. You can check me out at at Luke John Anderson. John is without the H, so it's LukeJohnAnderson. That's my Facebook page. Instagram, luke.john.anderson. YouTube, My TBI Fight. Obviously, My TBI Fight website, My TBI Fight Facebook page. So a lot of ways to connect with me. You can go on the contact form here. But I'd love to connect. Love to hear your story. Another little sneak peek. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, here's a little sneak peek for you. I'm going to be doing a podcast soon. So if you've got a unique story, I'd love to feature you on the podcast. So reach out, Love to connect. Thanks for sticking with me to the end. I know it's been kind of long, but appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon, and keep fighting.